Recording.
Awesome. All right. So today we're going to go over kind of our environment setup. So we're going to install a Java extension to get kind of Java hints when we're typing. And we're going to write our first command. So last week we created a template instead of having like the example code where it had all the code written for us. So let's go ahead and open that up. Your template, when you kind of open up these files, when you open it up, it should kind of look like this. Open up src main, and then you should see Java frc robot, and then open that up. You should see a couple of things. You should see main, robot, constants, and then you should see two folders, commands and subsystems. I want you guys to go ahead and open up commands and subsystems. Make sure there's only one Java file under the folder commands called example command.java. And then subsystems should only have one thing.
This is the Romi reference, or no?
This is we created like a new project last week.
I don't think we did that with Eden.
Okay. Eden, is that right?
I was here last week.
If you open up your project, does it look like this? Look like mine? Specifically under this commands folder, there should be only one file called example command.java. Max, if you can confirm as well. And I guess Ricky and Stuart, if you guys are following along.
What is it? Example.
Yes, I have that.
Yeah,
And nothing else, right?
Yeah, nothing else under that except for the subsystems.
Perfect. So it just says example command.java, right, Max?
Oh, under command, yeah.
Perfect. Eden, how about you?
Mine looks different. Mine has several files.
Okay, no worries. So this is what I want you to do, Eden. I want you to open up a file. So you get this little W icon in the upper right-hand corner. We played with it a lot last week, if you remember.
Yes.
So go ahead and click on that W and type in create. And it should have the option create a new project. Max and Ricky, you guys don't have to follow along. You guys have done this last week. So just Eden. So it should say create a new project. I want you to go ahead and click on that and this screen should pop up. It should be familiar from last week. Let me know when you're on the screen.
Okay, I got it.
Perfect. So go ahead and where it says select the project type, click on it. It's a button and click on template this time. Once you click on template, another prompt should pop up and it should be CPP and Java. Just a little explanation. CPP is C++. The PP stands for ++. And Java is, of course, what we're writing in. So we want to select Java. And then you're going to get a couple of options. We want to click on RomiRobot.
Okay.
Let me know when you've done that.
I did that.
Okay. Go ahead and click, select a base folder. So I like to put mine in the documents folder. You can put yours wherever you want.
Okay.
And then under project name, give it a good name. So I've named mine kind of Romi template to distinguish it from the example we made last time. I'm waiting for your confirmation, by the way.
Okay, I got that.
Cool. So go ahead and make sure create a new folder is checked. Under team number, put 1745. And for enable desktop support, don't check the box and go ahead and click on generate project. I'm not going to do it because I already have it generated. But once you click generate project, a prompt should pop up asking you if you want to open it up in the current window. Go ahead and click yes, you do want to open it up in the current window. Let me know when you've done that.
Okay, I clicked on it. I think it's okay. It says cannot create into non-empty folder.
Cannot create non-empty folder. Okay. What base folder did you select? The documents folder as your base folder?
I selected the desktop.
Go ahead and select something different than the desktop.
Okay.
And then try again and make sure create a new folder is checked and you have a project name.
Okay, it worked this time.
Awesome. Go ahead and open it up in the current window.
Okay.
So your screen should kind of look like this. On the left-hand side, it should say your project name, and then it should have a bunch of folders. I want you to click on SRC main, and it should kind of look like this. It should say deploy, and then another folder called java/frc/robot. I want you to go ahead and open that up, and you should see a couple of things, some Java files and commands and subsystems. I want you to expand commands, and I want you to make sure there's only one file in their commands called example command.java.
Okay, I see that. I see
Perfect.
that now.
Perfect. Okay. So now that you've done that, I want you guys kind of to follow along and open up these files as I kind of talk through them. So we have this robot.java, and you can kind of think of robot.java as like the bucket where all of the robot dependencies are kind of linked together and kind of come together to work as a whole. It's, to give a crude example, it's like the chassis for the programming team. Everything you do eventually gets kind of hooked up within this robot.java class. So if we continue scrolling down, you see this robot periodic method. This is a method. And within that robot periodic method, we have this command scheduler.getInstance.run. So let's talk through robot periodic. And Max, Eden, and Ricky, feel free to interrupt me anytime you guys have questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep steamrolling through the information. So how robot periodic works, it's like a giant loop. It goes to the top and comes to the bottom over and over and over again when you're in teleop or autonomous or whatever. And all that's going on in this robot periodic method is that this command scheduler instance, so we have this command scheduler, we get the instance for the command scheduler, and all it does, it runs the command scheduler. So we're not going to get into how command scheduler works, but all you need to know is that when you enable your robot, this thing just runs over and over and over again, scheduling the commands. So now that we've kind of gotten that out of the way and we know how the commands come together, let's go ahead and write some code to create a command. So before we can start writing code, we need to install one extension. So on the left-hand side, you have these buttons. The one that looks kind of like Tetris, if you hover over it, it says extensions. Go ahead and click on that. And you should kind of see this installed, and it should say WPI-lib. So once you guys are in this, I want you guys to search Java extension pack. And once you type Java extension, it would be like the first one. It has 6.7 million downloads. It's created by Microsoft. Go ahead and click on it. And I want you guys to go ahead and click on install. And it should say installing. Basically, what this does is when you start writing some Java code, it gives you hints through this thing called IntelliSense saying like, oh, you're starting to type a print line command. Okay, let me guess what the next part of this command that you're writing is. Once it's installed, it should say Java overview, and it should have this screen with a bunch of links. Can you guys all confirm when you guys have that screen up? I'm waiting on you three guys to kind of confirm when you guys are done with that. So we're not going to move on until everyone's kind of on the same page.
All right, mine's still installing.
Cool.
What do you?
says it's installed,
What's all
but I
you
don't have the
install?
screen that you're on.
It did say installed though, right?
Yes.
Successfully installed Sona source solar limit decode.
If you go back to this page, Eden, it's okay that the screen didn't pop up for you as long as this Java extension pack screen says installed or it has this uninstall button, you're good to go.
All right.
Are you good, Max?
Yeah.
Good, Eden?
Yes.
Ricky?
Don't wait for me. It's still installing.
We can wait a little bit. I'm surprised it's taking so long. It shouldn't be that big.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Okay, so while Ricky gets his installed, let's talk about some more subsystem stuff. So if you go back to the topmost button, it has like 2 pieces of paper, and if you hover over it, it says Explorer. I want you guys to go ahead and open up subsystems and open up ROMI drivetrain.java. And I just want to kind of talk about this ROMI drivetrain class. And so normally what I would do is kind of try to explain how Java works and what the heck a class is and what exactly is going on in this code. But I think we're going to kind of experiment, and instead of doing all of that, we're going to kind of just talk about things at a high level. And if you
There he is.
awesome.
And here's Hannah.
Welcome, Hannah. So let's go ahead and catch you up. So Hannah, I don't remember the last time you were here, but last time you were here, did you create a template project, or do you just have that one example project from before?
I think it might just be the example.
Okay, so what I want you to do is go ahead and create a new project. So I'll walk you through that. Go ahead and click on this W icon. Go ahead and open up your project or open up VS Code and click on that W icon and type in create. Let me know when you're there. I'm gonna wait for your kind of okay, and then I'll move on to each new step after that. Max, Eden, and Ricky, y'all are gonna hold tight until we get Hannah on the same page, and then we can kind of continue on forward.
Is there any way I can track the progress of this? It just keeps saying installing. There's a little blue line that's moving across.
You may want to close and open your VS Code and see if that helps.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Do that.
Hannah, were you able to get this create a new project dialog to come up?
I just got VS Code to open up.
Okay, sorry. It's kind of hard to gauge where you're at without me looking over your shoulder, in person.
Where do I open the create a new project?
So there's this little W icon in the corner. Do you see that?
Yes.
So
I'm
click on that.
installed.
Awesome, Ricky. So go ahead and click on that and just start typing in create. And the dialog should come up that says WPI lib : create a new project.
I clicked that.
Perfect. So there's this select a project type button. Go ahead and click on it and click template. There's 2 options, template and example. Click on template. Another dialog is going to pop up. It's going to say CPP or Java. You want to click on Java. And finally, it's going to ask you to select the project base. So what I want you to do is click on ROMI command robot. Let me know when those 3 options are done for you.
I've done that.
Perfect. So I want you to go ahead, like before, select the base folder. So personally for me, I like to put all my projects and documents. So I'm going to select the documents as my base folder.
I've selected a folder.
Okay, cool. So go ahead and give it a project name. Name it something different than what you named your other project. So this time I'm going to be naming mine Romi-template. Feel free to name it something else. And then once you give it a name, go ahead and click on the create a new folder checkbox. For team number, put 1745 and enable desktop support should be unchecked. Your screen should look very similar to mine. Once you've done all that, go ahead and click on generate project. I'm not going to click on it because I've already done it. If it's successful, it should say, do you want to open this up in a new window or the same window? And I want you to go ahead and click on open it in the same window. Let me know when you've done that.
I've done that.
Perfect. So the next thing I want you to do is, you see these icons in the left-hand side? There's this kind of two pieces of paper, the magnifying glass, and a bunch of other icons. I want you to click on the Tetris-like icon. It's going to say extensions if you hover over it. And you should have a screen similar to mine. It might look a little less populated. Let me know when you're on that screen.
I am on that screen.
Perfect. So what I want you to do is search for Java extension. When you search for it, the first option should be Java extension pack. It should say Microsoft. I want you to go ahead and click on that.
Should I install it?
Yep, go ahead and install it and let me know when it's done installing. So while it gets installed, Hannah, I just want to talk to you through some of the code we just talked through. So all we talked about was this robot.java. So robot.java exists here, by the way. When you click on the two papers, you should see something like this. It's going to be under src/main. You open up src main. It's going to be under Java FRC robot. And then under Java FRC robot, you should see this robot.java. So, by the way, I'm going to kind of breeze through this, and it's going to be, some of the stuff may not be clear, but if you have any questions, feel free to kind of ask. We're going to keep it at a very high level and use a lot of metaphors for what things mean. And hopefully as we code more, where you'll kind of start getting the hang of things, and you'll start to realize what kind of questions you need to be asking or what kind of things you need to be picking up on. Right now, you guys don't quite know what to ask or how to ask it, but it will improve as we go on. So within this robot class, so this is a class of this public class robot, we have this method. If you scroll down on line 41, the line numbers are on the left, by the way, called robot periodic. So all I want you to understand about this method called robot periodic, we know it's called robot periodic because it says robot periodic right here, is that it's an infinite loop. And what does an infinite loop mean? It just means it runs over and over and over again forever. So when you click on teleoperated and you run your robot, get your robot to run, this thing is running over and over and over again. And it only has one line of code in here. It's called command scheduler.getInstance.run. It's very simple. It's in plain English. We can kind of infer that command scheduler means that there is a scheduler that schedules the commands that we will write. We're getting the one instance of that command scheduler and we're running it. And basically all that means is that we have a bunch of commands. We have this command scheduler that will schedule these commands. And every time this robot periodic is called, those commands get scheduled and they run. We're not going to kind of go into how command scheduler works, but all you need to know is that it schedules commands like it says. So you're up to speed on the code we've kind of talked about now. I want you to go back to extensions and make sure this Java extension pack was installed. It should say disable and uninstall instead of the one install button. Can you confirm that's the case, Hannah?
I confirm that's the case. I also reloaded the page so that the changes would take into effect.
Perfect. Good job. Thanks for doing that. Okay, so at this point, everyone should have the thing installed. I want you guys to kind of open up this code as I kind of talk through it and scroll through it yourself instead of just looking at my screen. So you get comfortable with clicking through the folders and opening up the code and looking at the various things going on. So our goal for today is to write a command that makes our robot run. Right now, there is no code. If you deployed this code to your robot, nothing would happen. So under Java FRC robot, I want you guys to open up the subsystems folder, and under that, there should be a class called RomiDriveTrain. Go ahead and open that up, and we're going to kind of talk through what a subsystem is and why this is important to kind of understand. And this is kind of something that the WPI lib guys give us. Gonna give you guys a second to open it up. So we can see that just like our robot class, this is also a class called RomiDriveTrain. We know it's a class because it says public class RomiDriveTrain. What's interesting about this one that wasn't the case in robot is that it extends something. In this case, it extends subsystem base. So you can think of extending as kind of creating a skeleton you need to follow. We have this class called RomiDriveTrain, and without extending subsystem base, it doesn't know what kind of, let me put it this way. It's like you have a bare bones electronics board, and when you extend something, it's like putting a port on your electronics board. You're basically saying, these things need to be plugged into my class in order for it to be of a type subsystem base. So what I want you guys to understand from this RomiDriveTrain class is that if you scroll down, there's this arcade drive method. Just like robot periodic was a method, this is also a method. And we know it's a method because it's nested within a class, and it says public, and then there's a modifier. In this case, it's void, meaning it doesn't return anything. And we'll talk about return types in a future class. But all I want you guys to understand is that this is a method. It's called arcade drive, and it's a void type method. What is arcade drive doing? It takes in two doubles. What are doubles? Doubles are like numbers, but there are two types of numbers, right? There's an int and then there's doubles. Ints are, I'm just typing this so you guys have a visual. This isn't something you guys need to follow along. Ints are like whole numbers. So like 12 is an int. But if I wanted to have like a decimal in my number, it would be a double. So like 12.0 or 12.1241 would be a double. It couldn't be an int because it's not a whole number. So we know that this arcade drive method takes in two doubles, the x-axis speed and the x-axis rotate. And then it calls mdiff_drive. And if we click on mdiff_drive, this differential drive object, this is an object, by the way, highlights. So it's calling mdiff_drive, which has an arcade drive method itself, and it's passing that speed into z-axis rotate. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be writing a command that interacts with this method. We're going to try to take the output of our controller and pass it into this method so that then it can drive our robot. All right. So I'm sure you guys are thoroughly confused at this point, and hopefully things start to make sense as we start to write some code. And again, please interrupt me if you guys have questions or want to interject with points of clarification or whatever. So what I want you guys to do now is open up the commands folder and go ahead and create a new file. You right-click the folder. It should be highlighted and click new file. And I want you guys to call it arcadedrive.java. And once you click enter, it should have this structure. Let me know when you guys have all done that.
Where's the create new file button?
So if you right-click the folder, there is a new file button thing that appears.
Okay.
And Max, acknowledge that you guys have done that. Were you able to create the file, Eden?
It's under commands, right?
Yeah, so you open up the commands folder, and if you right-click the commands folder, it should have a bunch of options. The first one being new file.
Okay, got it. I did that.
And then you name it arcadedrive.java. The capitalization matters.
Mine already has one called Arcade Drive.
Okay. So remember when we created that template project? I want you to close the project that you have, and I want you to go ahead and open up that new template project folder we made.
Okay.
So how you can do that is you can do File, Open Folder, and then select the folder that you just created. It should have today's date on it. And then click on Select Folder. Were you able to find it?
I clicked open. I'm not sure. I think it's loading.
Okay.
So nothing happened. I think I might already be in that project.
So if you open up commands, does it have a bunch of files, or does it have the one example command.java file?
It has several, and it has the example command, but it has several more.
I think you may have created a different folder earlier today. Can you try to see if you can find that other folder you made?
Okay.
So like,
Are you able to share your screen, Eden?
I'm on a different computer.
Okay.
So for me, if I click open folder, let me see if I can make this bigger. There are two folders for me. I have Romi example and Romi template. Romi template is the one I made today. And if you hover over it, you can kind of see that it has today's date on it. Date created 2/6/2021. The Romi example, if I hover over it, it says 1/30/2021.
So I found the other one, and I'm in it, but Now I don't see the commands folder at all.
What do you see? Do you see something like Gradle, VS Code, WPI lib, build, Gradle, SRC main?
Yeah, I'm under SRC main and I'm under Java FRC robot, but there's just files. There are no folders. There's no commands.
Okay, let's do this. Let's go ahead and do this create a new project step again. So go ahead and click on the W icon, click on create a new project, and make sure you click on template. When you select a project type, you want template.
Got it.
And then the language is Java, and the project base is Romi command base robot. And then make sure you, when you select the base folder, make sure you kind of store it in your brain that I'm putting this folder here. So for me, I like to put it in the documents folder. Give it a name. So Romi template. Create a new, make sure create a new folder is checked. Your team number is going to be 1745. Make sure enable desktop support is unchecked and click on generate project. And when when you click on generate project, it's really important to click on open in same window.
Okay, I did that.
Okay, great. So if you open up Java FRC robot, what do you see now? And under commands, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, it worked now. I see example command.
Okay, awesome. So now you can go ahead and create the new Java file. So right click the commands folder, click on new file, and then it should have like kind of a text box for each type. We want to type it in what's called Pascal case. So the first letter of every word is going to be capitalized. So arcade with a capital A, drive with a capital D, dot Java. Java is going to be all lowercase. I already have it made. So, and then once you create it, it should have this kind of skeleton here opened up. So it should say package FRC robot commands and public class arcade drive. Were you able to do that, Eden?
Well, I created the project. It just keeps. Okay, now it's working. It wasn't letting me name it, but it's. Okay, I have it.
Okay, cool. And your file kind of looks like mine?
No.
What does it say in it?
It's just blank. I think that's because I didn't name it the first time. Let me try.
Yeah,
again.
so under commands, go ahead and delete every file other than example command.java. So I'm going to do the same. So now you should just have example command.java, right?
Yes.
And then, so I'm going to right click on new file. And then there's this kind of text box that appears, right? Then I'm going to name it arcadedrive.java.
Okay, I created it and it looks like yours now.
Awesome, awesome. Cool. So we have a class called arcade drive. We know it's a class because it says public class arcade drive. Remember we talked about how this subsystem Romi drivetrain extended subsystem base. We want to kind of do the same thing here, but we're not creating a subsystem here. We're creating a command. So we want to type in extends command base. And then I want you guys to always be pressing the combination Control S. So if you see up here next to my file name, there's this white dot. That means the file hasn't been saved. You want to always continuously save. I write a couple words and I press Control S to save. You can also press File, Save. Once you press Save, that white dot should go away. So now you should kind of see public class arcade drive, extends command base, and under command base, it should have a squiggly. Can everyone confirm that they've done that?
I confirm.
What buttons do you press again?
Control S, or you can press on File, Save, and the white dot should disappear. If the white dot's not there, that means the file has been saved. So if I type, you can see the white dot comes up. If I save, the white dot goes away. If I type again, the white dot comes up. I save, the white dot goes away. I get rid of some stuff, the white dot appears. If I save this time without pressing Control S, I go to File, Save, the white dot goes away.
I got it.
Awesome. Max?
I think I got it.
Sweet. So what this red squiggly means is that there is a problem. And if we hover over the red squiggly, it says command base cannot be resolved to a type. So what we want to do is see if our IDE, our VS Code, can kind of help us solve this problem. Click on Quick Fix, and a dialog box should appear. It should say import command base, create class command base, blah, 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 right? We want to go ahead and click on import command base. And then the red squiggly should go away, and this line should appear called import command base. All this import means is that basically you're referencing another file. So there's this command base.class that exists somewhere else. You don't need to know about this. I'm just showing you to kind of explain what's going on. This file exists. So when you say extends command base, it has no idea what you mean by command base unless you like tell it where to look. So when you click on this, when you hover over it, wow, this is difficult, and click on quick fix and press import, it's creating a reference to that file. This file exists under edu wpi lib first, blah, 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 blah. This file exists here. When I say command base, I want you to go look for this file in this directory. That's all an import is. And I'm going to stop asking you guys for confirmations. From that here on out, I want you guys to kind of copy what I'm doing. And if you have trouble with something I've done, please interrupt me and we'll walk through it. It's okay if you guys have some trouble. Okay. So we now have this class and extends command base. We want to create what's called a constructor. So how do you create a constructor? You do public, and then you give it the same name as your class. And what's neat about this extension we installed, the Java extension, is that as we type, it gives us suggestions. So I want to type arcade drive. It's already giving me the suggestion for arcade drive. So I can just click on it, and it fills it out for me. So public arcade drive, open close parentheses, and then we want to press space and open close brackets. And there should be no red squigglies. So now your file should look like this. And I'm going to go ahead and just press enter between my two squigglies so I can, the code goes between these two squigglies. So you can see that I put the constructor between the two squigglies of my my class. And now I've created two squigglies for what's called my constructor. And we know this is a constructor because I'm going to open up Romy drivetrain again. When we looked at this,
there's arcade drive. There is squiggly on arcade drive.
do you have open close parentheses right after and then space open close squiggly?
Yes.
Can you share your screen?
Yes.
You're sharing your screen. I don't see it, Max.
How is it?
No. So how about this? Instead of sharing your screen, how about you clear everything out from arcade drive, what you wrote, and you should have just this public class Arcade drive extends command base with the open close squigglies, and there should be no red squigglies. Do you agree?
Public class, arcade drive, yeah.
So no red squigglies, right?
No red squigglies.
Awesome. So you see how there are two open close brackets here? There's one open bracket after command base, and then there's a close bracket. Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
I want you to type your public arcade drive in between those squigglies. So public arcade drive, the capitalization absolutely matters. It has to match your class name. Open close parentheses. And then two little squigglies. I'm using the term squigglies way too much. I'm going to use brackets from now on. So it should say public arcade drive, open close parentheses, space, two brackets, open close brackets.
It's still arcade drive is squiggle.
Okay, I'm gonna need you to share your screen. Let me see if I can.
You all should be able to
Stop
share screens. Multiple participants, advanced sharing options. Who can start sharing? Only host.
Yeah, I have the option. I know that.
It says I'm sharing.
Wow.
Maybe I don't know how to open it up. Let me see. Where would it appear? Would it appear in the video panel?
I just see Kusha's.
Do I need to stop sharing?
Yeah, Kusha, stop sharing and see what happens.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. It's okay. You've misspelled arcade drive.
Of course I did.
Yes, no.
It's misspelled everywhere.
It's misspelled. It's misspelled consistently, which is good. Go ahead and save the file, Max. Can you hover over the red squiggly? Okay, that's okay. Your red squiggly is okay. I don't know why mine is not throwing that squiggly.
Mine doesn't show it either.
Mine has the red squiggly.
So Max, can you open up your extensions button? And get rid of what you have in the little text box. Click on Sonar Lint. Eden, do this as well. Hannah, do you have a red squiggly?
I do not, for whatever reason.
That's okay. That's good. Go ahead and press uninstall, both of you guys. And click on reload required, Max. All right, the red squiggly is gone. Eden, were you able to do the same thing?
Yes, it worked.
Awesome. And no red squiggly, right?
No red squiggly.
Also, my dog is sitting in this window over here. I don't know if you guys can see him. He's gonna growl a bunch because there are squirrels in the backyard, and how dare they exist in the backyard.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and take over sharing.
All right.
Cool. Obligatory, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. So we have this constructor. So what's a constructor? Well, a constructor basically sets up your class. So when your class is first created, this constructor is called, and everything within these squigglies is ran. It's like an initializer. Like when you have a loading screen in a game, most likely what's happening is that a bunch of constructors are being called and they're all kind of processing. And that's what a loading screen basically is. It's a bunch of stuff getting initialized. So we want to start initializing the objects or classes we want to utilize in our command. So above our constructor, we need to start naming our dependencies. So we looked at Romi drivetrain before. Let's go ahead. One second. Yeah, let's go ahead and add that drivetrain dependency in. So we're going to be creating an object. What's an object? An object is an, how do I say it? It's like a copy of a class. So you have a class, it's like your definition. When you create an object, it's like an instance of that class. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in Romi drivetrain. And when you're typing, it should appear and you can click on it. And when you click on it, it should do the auto import. So what basically happened is that you wrote this Romi drivetrain and it recognized that this is a file within your project, and then it did an import, and it's pointing. So it's saying, look at this file under FRC robot subsystems Romi drivetrain. And if we look here, we have this folder FRC, we have this folder robot, and then we have this folder subsystems. And what do we have within subsystems? Romi drivetrain. So all you've done is kind of say that whenever I type in this word, look at this file. And then we need to name our object. So we've said that we have a reference to this class. We need to give it a name. So we're going to call it drivetrain. And I prefer to write my object names kind of in this format called camel case. Why is it called camel case? Well, a camel kind of looks like this, right? There is its body, and then it has like a hump, right? All camel case means is that when you're typing, the first word is lowercase, and then each word after that has an uppercase letter to begin the word. So like if I wanted to say Romi drivetrain, I would remove this and say Romi drive with a capital D, train with a capital T. But for now, we're just going to name it drivetrain. And we're going to go ahead and put a semicolon at the end. So now we've created this reference to our class Romi drivetrain. What is that reference called? It's called an object. But there's more to an object. You can't just have this empty reference. We need to now populate that reference with a bunch of options. So if you guys remember, and
Can I interrupt?
yeah, of course.
So I guess I wanted to point out that the reason we did this first Romi drivetrain line outside of our constructor is because we're going to want to use it in multiple places. If we had put that line inside the constructor, it would kind of be constrained only to be used within those squigglies or those brackets.
Exactly. Well said.
There's a concept in computer science called scope of identifiers, where the scope of something, it only exists. In Java, something only exists inside of those curly braces, inside of the curly braces. So drivetrain exists inside of public arcade drive, curly brace, and if we make more of those, it'll exist in that. But everything that you make inside of public arcade drive can't be accessed by other things outside of it.
Exactly.
You can yell at your friends in class, but you can't yell at your friends in another class.
That's really funny, Stuart.
Okay, so
We say public or private in front of the Romi drivetrain.
yes, technically you should say private final. I figured that we keep it simple for now and do it without identifiers, and we can go back in subsequent lessons and give them identifiers like private. But you're absolutely right, Hannah. We do want it to be private. And the reason, let's go ahead and, since you brought it up, let's go ahead and add that in. We want this to be private. What does private mean? Private just means that it exists within these set of curly braces. Outside of this, no one can touch this drivetrain object to kind of mess with it. Stuart and Ricky, feel free to jump in again whenever I'm doing a poor job at explaining.
No, that's great. in Java, I believe there's only public and private. In other languages, there's another thing, but we're not going to talk about it because it doesn't exist in Java, and it's really super confusing. So yeah, you have private, which are your private variables or private object references that only you as an object have access to your private data. You have public, so like where it says public arcade drive, that's a public method that other methods can say, hey, arcade drive. They can ask you to do this stuff, but they can't look at Romy drivetrain. They can only look at whatever you've made public.
Exactly. So the reason we can create Romy drivetrain here is that if we look in Romy drivetrain.java, it's public. If Romy drivetrain, if we made it private, and we go back to arcade drive, now we have red squigglies all everywhere, and it says can't be resolved to a type. Why can't it be resolved? Because it's not public, it's private. It doesn't exist outside of Romy drivetrain. So as soon as we change this back to public and save it, now we don't have red squigglies. Okay, so we have this Romy drivetrain, but it's kind of like a skeleton. We've created the skeleton of Romy drivetrain within here. We need to kind of hydrate this skeleton, give it some meat. So how do we do that? We do that through this thing called dependency injection. And I don't know how to explain dependency injection. You're just going to have to take my word for it that this is dependency injection. So within the two open and close parentheses, we want to do this Romy drivetrain thing again. We want to create a reference to Romy drivetrain and then name it the same exact thing, drivetrain. So your class should kind of look like this. So now within the two squigglies of our constructor, within these two squigglies, we want to set drivetrain equal to drivetrain. So basically all this means is that when we call arcade drive from somewhere else, kind of like how we're calling Romy drivetrain in here, we're going to have to pass in Romy drivetrain into it. And why we do this is because we want to only have one instance of Romy drivetrain within our project. Otherwise, if we didn't do this throughout our project, we'd have multiple instances of drivetrain and our robot would be confused which one it should be using. It would be glitching, basically. So it's a little confusing, right? It says drivetrain here and it says drivetrain here. How do we differentiate the two? So within this squiggly, we do this thing called this. And this is super confusing. It took me all of high school to understand this. If you don't understand it, that's okay. But all this means is that anything within these two squigglies that exists outside of these two squigglies, we can reference. So if we do this.drivetrain, we know that this...
So I'm going to interrupt you there, Kusha. When we're talking about that scope of identifier things, I actually did tell a fib, a small fib, where I mentioned that, hey, variables or objects are only visible within inside of their own curly braces. The exception to that is when objects are being, I am gesticulating a lot here without my video turned on. The exception to that is when objects or variables are passed through those brackets after the class name. So this Romy drivetrain right in that public arcade Romy drivetrain, its scope starts inside of the brackets. Even though it's technically outside of the brackets, it's really inside of the brackets. Does that make sense?
Would it be less confusing if we named them differently?
Yes.
Yes. But if we want to have FRC caliber programming, we have to use this. There's no way around it.
Yeah. So right now you have two references. You have two references. They're both called drivetrain. To objects that are ROMI drivetrains. Kusha, can you highlight both of those?
Right. Here is one object that's called ROMI drivetrain.
Here's another object called ROMI drivetrain.
And the one that we created, where the private ROMI drivetrain, that's ours. We created it. And now when we have the constructor one in between the parentheses, that's getting passed to us.
Someone else made that. They're giving us, here's the address of the one that I want you to use. You look at the address and you're like, from then on, the closest one is this. When I use the word this, you're meaning this one is that private one above at the top, not the one that you are given. It's not yours. It's someone else's. The one that you're talking about, your instance of ROMI drivetrain, is this .drivetrain. And if you wanted to, you could have called that one that's getting passed in past drivetrain. So it's ROMI drivetrain, past drivetrain, and then you just say drivetrain equal past drivetrain, so that your drivetrain now matches the drivetrain you are given. The reason you always want to use this dot is it's unambiguous. If people are using the same names, if you're using a slightly different name than someone else, or especially if you're doing international and someone is spelling something slightly different than the way that you would spell it, color detector with like someone in the UK, and they make a color object and you make a color object, and there's a slight difference in color detection. Use this dot to indicate this is my stuff. Even though you're passing me stuff that's called the same thing, this dot is mine.
The other thing that's cool is if you like click on that drivetrain, like double click on it, it tells you which one it's converted. To click on so it's highlighting the one that it is.
So if I remove this and I click on it, it highlights this one. If I add this, that was a very eloquent way of explaining it, Marky. If I put this and I save it, it highlights that one.
I've never noticed that.
So now we want to set drivetrain equal to drivetrain. So whenever we set up arcade drive somewhere else, the constructors are going to be called. The constructor is going to be called. This is the constructor. They're going to have to give us a reference to ROMI drivetrain. We're taking the reference that the person using arcade drive, they're gonna pass in their idea of drivetrain. We're going to set our idea of drivetrain, this .drivetrain, which is this object here, to their reference of drivetrain. We've taken it and said, you made this? Okay, I now know of this thing you made. Make sense? Probably not. We'll move on though. So now we want to add two more things here. So if we look at ROMI drivetrain.java and we go back down to arcade drive, we see that it takes in two doubles. And what are doubles? Doubles are just numbers with decimals. It takes in a x-axis speed and a z-axis rotate. Basically, all arcade drive is, in case you didn't know, one stick controls your throttle, how fast your robot's going. One stick controls the rotation of your robot. So how fast you go and which way your robot's going. So this is how fast you're going, which way your robot's going. So we want to pass in two objects that are references to how much our joysticks have moved. For this, we use suppliers. So we're going to do private supplier, and it's very important that when you type it, you click on it so it does the import for you. Otherwise, if you don't click on it and you just type it, it's going to have a squiggly, theoretically. theoretically you'll have a squiggly and you'll have to do that quick fix thing we did earlier.
So
And
the cool thing about having other mentors teach things is you learn things all the time. I didn't know that you could do that. I always did the import manually.
so a supplier just means like we have, it's like a generic term for, I don't know how else to, I can't explain it without using the term supplier. It's gonna supply us something. We need to define what that thing it is that it's supplying. So with that, we need to put in this, what do you call these things?
Templates?
Templates? Are they
Oh,
templates?
that's C++.
They're like object references. We need to use these little brackets. How about that? We use these little brackets and we type in double. We want a supplier of type double. That's all this means. We have the supplier and it's going to supply us doubles. It's going to supply us our joystick movements. And we're going to call this
Generics. They're called generics.
They're called generics. You're absolutely right. So supplier is a generic, and by saying double, we're saying that this generic object is now of type double. It's going to be supplying this type double. We're going to call this x-axis. We're going to call this throttle. No, we'll call it x-axis speed. Why are we going to call it x-axis speed? Let me split this on the right so we can take a look at it. So we have this arcade drive. It takes in an x-axis speed, a z-axis rotate. So we want to name it the same thing. So x-axis speed. And then we want to create another private object called supplier as well. And you guessed it, it's going to be of type double, and we're going to take in a z-axis rotate. And you guessed it, we're going to have to pass those into the constructor because someone somewhere else has defined these. We're just taking in the reference, so there aren't multiple joysticks basically floating around in our program.
Yeah, Eden mentioned this, but sometimes your code screen is just behind. I don't know what's causing it.
I don't know how to fix that. I can
That's okay.
slow down, I guess. So same thing here. We're going to do supplier, and it's going to be a type double, and we're going to name it the same exact thing, x-axis. And then we're going to do another supplier for our other object we created called double, of type double, and we're going to call it z-axis rotate. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say this dot x-axis speed equals the x-axis speed we're passing in. Same thing. We're going to do z-axis rotate equal to the z-axis rotate we're passing in. So, oops. So we have this x-axis speed.
The other thing I'll add is as you're typing, there's a drop-down box. And if the thing that is highlighted in that drop-down box is the thing you want, so you can go use your up and down arrows to select different things, then all you need to do is press the tab key to have it auto fill.
Exactly. So we're almost done with our constructor. And constructor takes in three things. It takes in a drivetrain object, and it takes two suppliers, the throttle and our rotate, the x-axis speed and the z-axis rotate. For commands, we have to do this thing called add requirements. And I really don't know how to explain add requirements. You're just going to have to take my word for it that you need this within your command. So add requirements. Basically, let me try to explain. Add requirements. Within your constructor, you need to have this argument called add require. Sorry, go ahead.
My supplier, like, it says it can't be resolved to a type.
Okay, if you hover over it, does it give you a little quick fix option?
Yeah, I thought you said not to do that.
No, go ahead and do it. So it says it can't be resolved to a type, just like this, right?
Well, I can't see your screen because it's behind.
Give it a second to catch up, I guess. We might need to use like Twitch or something next time so y'all can see my screen in real time. So hopefully you can see it now. Can you see it now?
Okay. Yeah, now it's showing in it. Yeah, that's what it looks like.
You want to click on this quick fix. And then another dialog is going to appear when you click on quick fix, and it's going to say import supplier. You're going to want to click on import supplier. And then you should only have yellow squigglies on your screen, if any.
So I did that, and now one of them is working, but the others still say they can't be resolved.
Make sure your spelling is the same. And make sure you save the file.
Oh, look. Oh, I spelled it wrong. On the other three.
It happens. It happens to the best of us. Spelling is really important, unfortunately, and it's not my strong suit.
Yeah, one of the hardest things about programming is making sure you spell things right and putting the semicolons at the end of lines.
Agreed.
Because sometimes you can't ever figure out what's wrong until someone else like looks at it and points it out to you.
Okay, so
I have a question.
yeah.
Does there need to be all of those tabs in the top part of the constructor?
Like for the supplier lines?
Yes. Or
It's
can you just like have it all together at once?
like with the comma?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have it like that. It's really preference. My preference is to have it this way because if I don't know how fast my screen is refreshing, but if I put it all on one line, I have to kind of scroll over, and that's really annoying if I'm wanting to read code. I want to just scroll one way. I don't want to scroll in multiple ways. So when I press enter, it kind of, and I like to tab it over so that you can kind of see the constructor at a glance, what it's taking in, and I don't have to scroll over. So it's just a preference and a stylistic type deal. You'll hear people argue about that. You'll hear people argue about whether the curly brace should be on the next line or on the same line. Eliza hates it when it's on the same line. I hate it when it's on the next line, for example. So there's a lot of opinionated stylistic choices people make when programming.
Kusha, can you try one thing for me? I just want to see if this is an extension I have or something that is common. Can you up in like over by Romy drivetrain, can you right click somewhere in a white area, in a white space area? Right click. Yeah, okay, that's an extension I have. I was going to show them how to auto generate stuff. Like auto generate arcade, the constructor and everything.
For now, I think it's important that they type it out, and when they get more advanced, that stuff will come in handy. Okay, so let's talk about add requirements. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, so let's talk about add requirements. All add requirements means is that anytime you add in a subsystem in your command, you want to add it as a requirement. So we've included one subsystem. Our subsystem is Romy drivetrain. We know it's a subsystem because if I hover over Romy drivetrain and I hold down control, it gives us a preview of the Romy drivetrain class, and we can see that it extends subsystem base up here. We see that it extends subsystem base. We don't have to do that. You can go to the file. You can see that it's a class and extends subsystem base. So for add requirements,
you can also see that it's in your subsystem folder on the left.
Exactly, because it has the folder structure up here. The package kind of tells you what folder it's in, and it extends subsystem base. So it's a subsystem. Every subsystem needs to be added to this add requirements in your constructor. So all we have to do here is drivetrain. Okay. So we're coming up on 4 o'clock. How are you guys on time? Can you guys stick around for a little more, or should we call it a day and come back to this next lesson?
I think we should call it a day.
Anyone else?
I'm good to work. It's really whatever anyone else wants.
Eden, do you have to leave, or can you stick around for another 10, 15 minutes?
10 or 15 minutes is good.
Hannah, is that okay with you?
Sounds good.
Okay. So we want to do one other thing in this class. So we've set up our arcade drive command, right? It's all set up. It has all the requirements we need. Now we need to kind of execute this command. So how do we do that? Well, within command base, there is a concept of execute. And we want to override that. So how do we override stuff? We type in @. By the way, this should be outside of the constructor. You can see that I'm outside of the constructor now, but within the curly braces of the class. We want to type @override. And then we want to type in public void execute with lowercase e, open close parentheses, curly brace open and close. Let me know when my thing updates and you guys can see what I've typed. I'm going to assume that
Question
it's
about the add requirement.
okay. Sure.
Is the drivetrain inside of the add requirements referencing the one at the top or the one inside of the constructor?
Good question. It is referencing the one inside of the constructor because we don't use this, right? If you click on it, it references the one inside of the constructor. But really, you could do this dot drivetrain at this point as well. This, since you've done this dot drivetrain equals drivetrain, they are literally the same thing now. They reference the same. When you create an object, it puts it in your memory, right? It's referencing that same memory address now. Functionally, this dot drivetrain is the same as drivetrain. So it doesn't matter whether or not you use this or not. The reason I didn't use this is because I'm literally copying their example and they didn't use this in their example. But if you wanted to, you could use this dot drivetrain. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So what does @override execute mean? There is a method, and we know this is a method because unlike the constructor up here, there is a qualifier called void. And it's not a class because it doesn't say class, it says void. So this method exists within the command base class that we've extended. So when we do an @override, we're overriding the execute method within command base and redefining it for our arcade drive class. I just threw out a bunch of terms there, so interrupt me if that didn't make sense. So now what we want to do is remember this arcade drive method within drivetrain? We want to reference that. So how do we reference that? We do this dot drivetrain. So that references this class up here, this object up here. An instance of a class is called an object. We then want to reference the method. We can see that this is public and it exists within drivetrain. So we can just do dot arcade drive. And what, by the way, what I did there was that tab thing Ricky was talking about. So I type in arcade drive. It gave me this little preview of arcade drive. And then I press tab. So now we want to replace x-axis speed and z-axis rotate with our reference of x-axis speed and z-axis rotate. So then what we do is do this dot x-axis rotate, or I'm sorry, x-axis speed. And then we replace z-axis rotate with this dot z-axis rotate. Why is it yelling at
Does
me?
it need the this because they're not exactly the same? The ones that had been in parentheses didn't have a capital A.
So technically you can do them. So yes, the reason we replaced them is because they weren't the same capitalization as the ones up here. We could technically get away without this. But the reason you want to use this is you're making it very clear where you're getting this information from. So let's say you had a double x-axis speed, right? In here. How do you know whether this x-axis speed within here is referencing this one or this one? It should actually be supplier double, I'm sorry. How do you know, how can you reference this x-axis speed instead of this one? Well, if you use this, it calls this top level x-axis speed. Without this, it's calling this x-axis speed. You can see because I click on it, just like Ricky said, it highlights it. And when I use this dot and I click on it, it highlights the one up here. You're making it very clear to the poor programmer reading your code in the future exactly which x-axis speed you are referencing. Does that make sense, Hannah?
Yes.
Okay, so, and we're getting close to wrapping up here, guys. If you hover over Arcade Drive, it has a red squiggly and it says the method double-double, Arcade Drive double-double is not applicable for the arguments supplier double, supplier double. All that's saying is that Arcade Drive, this Arcade Drive method we're referencing, takes in two doubles. It doesn't take in a supplier double. So we want to get the double, just a raw double, instead of passing in the whole supplier double. How do we do that? We do a dot get at the end of each. So dot get and dot get. And now our red squiggly has gone away, because if I control hover over this dot get, we can see that it returns, it says gets a result. It's returning a double. We're not passing in a supplier double now, we're passing in a double. And this method takes in two doubles. So I think this is a good stopping point for today. Unfortunately, we didn't get our robots driving. So next Saturday, we will work on actually doing something with this Arcade Drive class and actually making it drive the robot. I think that would take us another hour or so. So I think now is the good time to stop.
So one thing I wanted to bring up, because you brought it up at the beginning, is there a way we can get you guys to all show up at the same time? Is 2 not good? Do we need to start at 2:30 or 3?
I thought it started at 2:30.
Are you
Is it
able to show
okay
up
then?
at 2?
So is everyone cool with 2 o'clock? If it needs to be earlier or later, that's totally okay. Now is the time to tell us your preference of when it should start.